Throughout history, freethinkers have outraged the religious with their wacky ideas about the virtues of free speech, reason, and of course, eating babies. Now, God is dying, and it's time to dispose of his remains. From the pits of hell, Satan sends two puppets of the imperialist West and the Zionist Jews against God, Islam, and tiny kittens to bring you their propaganda and conspire for a new world order. This is Secular Jihadists for a Muslim Enlightenment with Ali Rizvi and Armin Navabi.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Secular Jihadists for a Muslim Enlightenment. My name is Ali Rizvi, and with me is, as always, is Armin Navabi. Armin, hi. How are you today? How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Yeah. Do you want to continue the conversation we were having before?
No, I think.
No? Okay.
I think we're going to lose all our patrons.
Yeah. We'll hold a special event for that. Anyway, so I'm gonna get right to it. ExMuslims of North America. This is something that a lot of people in our audience are familiar with. It started off as an organization about 5 years ago. Then it's pretty much developed into a movement, and now it's essentially a phenomenon, and it's growing faster every day. So the organization has, like ExMuslims North America, this is something that Armin and I have both worked with. They have a college campus tour. Proud member, and they have a college campus tour called Normalizing Dissent.
Yes.
They have a series of really, really phenomenal and moving personal videos on their YouTube channel, just showing stories of the people from the Muslim world, people who grew up in Muslim communities who have left the Islamic faith and embraced reason. And a lot of these videos have gone viral. And the guest that we have tonight is Muhammad Syed. He's the president and the co-founder of the organization. He started it with Sarah Haider about 5 years ago. And so I'm just going to start with this. What's it like? Just 5 years ago, you guys started this, and now it's everywhere. It's being covered by Slate. You've been covered by the BBC. You've been mentioned pretty much everywhere. You're getting a lot of coverage. You've had some amazing events, a lot of viral videos.
It's been very different than I anticipated, in the sense that we have achieved a lot more success than I ever imagined. On the other hand, we get a lot more pushback, as everybody in the ex-Muslim space does, than I had ever imagined.
Wait,
yeah. So
you got more pushback than you imagined? Like, can you give us examples?
No, in the sense that you expect, like what happened recently with the Houston event, where before starting it, I had always anticipated that we would get bad reactions and negative reactions and pushback from Muslims. I hadn't anticipated that on behalf of Muslims, there would be third parties that would be pushing back, but we'd be pushing back even harder than Muslims do.
Mm.
Right. So for the background, excuse me, that's my cough. It's very old. It's been around for a while. But let's talk about a little bit of the background. Armin, you talked about this in our last episode, but
apparently I shouldn't have, but okay.
Well, no, we can't talk about it too much because right now I think there's a case happening with this situation. But so I'll say just some of the basics that we went. You guys went. There was the ISNA
before we talk about that, I just want to say, what I like about ExMuslim of North America right now is that they're experimenting with so many different methods, right? So they first had this campus tour to see if they could go to campus and reach out to people. They have this, so they also experimented with faith to faithless. Well, no, kind of like faith to faithless documentary.
Life Beyond Faith is what we called it.
Yeah. So, but it was, okay. So sorry. I should know. I've said I'm a proud member and I get the name right. Beyond, what is it called again? Sorry.
Life Beyond Faith.
Life Beyond Faith. Can you go faith?
No, we were basically trying to highlight the fact that a lot of people are leaving religion and their lives after religion have been good.
Right.
You have a lot of people that are in the closet and are afraid and are worried about the consequences, and showing them that life afterwards can be positive, can be wonderful, and you can overcome whatever obstacles exist in your life. Is to a great extent empowering.
So go check that on their YouTube channel. The videos there are very professionally done, and they're so heartwarming. If you watch those videos, they highlight a lot of the ex-Muslims in North America. They highlight their stories, and some of them are going to make you laugh. Some of them are going to make you cry. They're amazing. So I think this is now a new thing that they are working, and I'm such a big fan of this now. I've been fan of the other things. I'm very excited about, and now this is both you and Sarah. Sarah Haider is the other co-founder of Ex-Muslims of North America.
And previous guest on the podcast. Check out that episode. It was pretty cool too.
Yeah, that was really great. So now this is a new thing, and this is ex-Muslims going and directly reaching out to Muslims and talking to them. So and see if we could get accepted, see if we could, what they think about us. This is not even about us telling them that, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, this is not about us telling them that Islam is wrong and why it's mostly about accepting.
Basically, 1 in 4 raised Muslims in America have left the faith. Right. So pretty much in every single family, you have people that have left the faith and they're not in the closet. They're not acknowledged. Their family, they're concerned about losing their family, and attitudes within the Muslim communities needs to change. Right. It's a matter of family. It's a matter of love. And we wanted to and still want to engage with Muslims to make them understand that these are your brothers, sisters, mothers, daughters, right? That you already love. And you need to talk about it and accept it.
Yeah, and this is such a powerful way, because and you know, a lot of people, when they think about ex-Muslims, a lot of time we talk about ex-Muslims in Islamic countries and the things that they face, which is basically imprisonment, torture, death. But when it comes to ex-Muslims in North America or in other Western countries, what they face is, being demonized by their family, abandoned, disowned, ostracized. A lot of them are financially dependent on their parents. And this is, even within Muslims within these Western countries, leaving Islam is not at all something that is like, a lot of ex-Muslims have had a lot of bad experiences with their community, with their families. You know that more than anybody, because you talk to a lot of ex-Muslims that are secretly ex-Muslim in North America. Like, many of the members of ex-Muslims of North America are not in the closet. So I mean, even though they're not in an Islamic country, they don't feel like it's safe for them to come out, which says a lot about how much the pressure from the community is, given that and the thing what actually. The first thing that Ex-Muslim of North America did, which is before all of this, which is, I think, one of the most underrated things that EXMNA does, is the screening process, and I don't. This is because it's secret. That is done in secret. It goes unappreciated, because I think it takes the most amount of manpower from you guys to do this.
So 80 or 90% of our time is spent on that.
Yeah, it's most of your time.
The screening and the vetting, right?
Yeah, because basically what EXMNA is doing is trying to provide a group for an environment for ex-Muslims to meet each other and to see that they're not alone, to meet other ex-Muslims, but they want to make sure they do it in a safe way where when ex-Muslims know if they come in, they're not going to be outed, it's not going to become public. So this requires a lot of screening process. But because it's all done in a secret way, I think it goes very unappreciated. it's very underrated compared to these other things you do. But I think it's actually the most valuable service that you're providing. Yeah, go ahead.
That feeds into pretty much every aspect of what we do. So community is something that I would say is the most important thing of being human. We all crave social connections. We all crave understanding. We all crave people around us that we can connect to. And if you're in the closet and you can't talk to anybody, you lack that. And it's hard to stand up. It's hard to make a difference. It's hard to advocate for yourself when you don't have anybody else. One of the common things that you hear is people that have never encountered other ex-Muslims think that they're crazy. Like, it feels like I was the only one and I'm crazy. And building those connections that allow people to make positive change in their life. But the other thing is, on our end, we've been building up these communities for a while now. So we have 20-25 chapters around the country. Wow. So we can leverage that now to do other activism related work. So our Life Beyond Faith videos that you were talking about, all of the people that were covered in there were people drawn from our communities whose stories we knew, who we knew personally, and we could leverage their experiences to create these videos. Right. Same for our Normalizing Dissent tour. Most of the people that we pulled in were people that were in our communities that wanted to do more. So when you see other people that are exactly like you overcoming obstacles, and not only overcoming obstacles, but standing up and fighting for others, right. That changes things conceptually, and then you want to make that change for others as well. Right. And that is how social change occurs.
Right. And I think this is very much like, so a lot of your members, the only outlet they have outside of Islam is the communities that you have provided for them, right? And they had no other way. You made it possible for them to be able to meet other people that have left Islam. But the few of them that I don't know what percentage of them are publicly open about it, but the ones that they are, you ask them to maybe become because they're publicly out, you ask them to become active. And this is one of them was the videos you made. And now this is another one, which is going out in the street and going out to these events and talking to Muslims. And I think the point of this is the ones that are out could normalize being out and ex-Muslim for the ones that are not yet out. So to make it easier for the ones that are in the closet to come out of it, which is very much.
And you can show them, like you said, that, like after they come out, that life afterwards is good.
Right.
It's something that is doable.
Well, it's not good for all of them. Yeah, go on.
No, it's not. But
you can overcome. That's the point. If you suffer at a certain point, certain bad things may happen, but overall you can overcome. So one of the guys that we covered, Jamal, who's a very close friend, Somali American, he went through a lot of violence and his family treated him very horribly. But he graduated, he went through a lot, but he's doing great for himself, and he's open and public and advocating for Somalis, and he's helped people in Somalia and over here, and we worked with him to help a bunch of Somalis. But as a result of it, he's become somewhat of an icon in Somali circles. He constantly get death threats, but he also, if you talk to any Somali ex-Muslim, they'll know who Jamal is. They absolutely adore him. And as a result, so when we put out his video with the Life Beyond Faith thing, we within a day, we got a dozen other people that were, okay, I came out to my parents. And he inspired so many other people that it's caused a ripple within the Somali community.
Wow. Can we have him on our show? We should get this
probably. He's a bit, there's some things going on with him right now for the next few weeks, but after that, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is very much like the gay rights movement, though, isn't it? Kind of like when the first people that came out were like seen as like disgusting, people. A lot of gay people in the community said like, maybe we should just be gay in secret. Why are we bringing attention to us? But because a lot of people took the heat initially, then they managed to normalize it and make it something accepted. And I think this is what I say about the ex-Muslim movement is that it's the civil rights movement of our time. I mean, this is one of the. I
would say it is the most important of the 21st century.
Yeah, it is. It is because there's no other minority group that I could think of that is punishable by death in 13 countries in the world. Like I'm not. The thing is that when I say that, it seems like I'm taking part in the Oppression Olympics, but it's not really that if it's the facts, you know what I mean? I'm actually just stating the facts. Yeah. I'm not trying to outcompete other groups that are being discriminated. This is actually true.
And on a larger scale, actually, it's the Muslim world actually largely sat out a lot of the stuff that happened with the Enlightenment, right? So the movement towards, how the majority of the developed world, most of there's separation of religion, and even if not officially.
We're sort of a canary in the coal mine. Like there's something seriously wrong in the Muslim world due to which we're persecuted. And as our speaking up will hopefully enable the Muslim world to change. Yeah. When you have freedom of speech, when you have freedom of thought, freedom of conscience, ex-Muslims will benefit tremendously, but then it'll open up space for a lot of other people in between. So right now, if somebody talks about having a better version of Islam or problems within Islam, not even necessarily reform, like Salman Taseer, where he talked about Christians shouldn't be subject to blasphemy laws in Pakistan. He was murdered. Simply speaking up about problems in how Islamic law is even applied is liable to make you an apostate.
Oh, Malala Yousafzai was shot in the head. I mean,
yeah, exactly. So if we're the boogeyman and we're normalized, then it opens up a massive chasm in between for a lot of other people to start speaking up.
Okay, that's a very important point. So basically, like, even for Muslims that are not ex-Muslims that want to speak about problems with Islam, you're saying that normalizing ex-Muslims serves them as well, because if being an ex-Muslim is normalized, then they are doing much less than us, so they can get away with a lot more shit than, because we have normalized the worst case scenario, which is leaving Islam. That's a very important point. Good. Yeah, so we're actually helping Muslims as well with their activism.
Yeah, we are. So one of the things that you've started now is going out and actively engaging with Muslims rather than, just all the stuff that I guess all of us had been doing in the past. And so recently this incident, I know we can't talk about it too much, but just broadly, the one that you alluded to right in the beginning of this, so I'll just get back to that, was that you went to the ISNA conference, at the Islamic Society of North America conference.
Okay. Whose idea was that, you or Sarah?
Most of the their ideas tend to be me. Sarah's the more sane, rational one that let's think about this twice before doing it.
Oh, was she? So she's like, she's your check and balance. She's like, are you sure? Are you sure you want to go on? Yeah, so that's good. No, it's a good
balance. So, yeah, that's a good. Yeah.
So you guys went there, and so I don't want to get into details. Can you explain, Muhammad?
So the idea generally is to engage with Muslims. A lot of them don't know that there are so many ex-Muslims around. They don't know about what ex-Muslims go through here and internationally. And from my perspective, the only way things will change is when Muslims start advocating for change. So Muslims in the West, where we can actually engage with them without being murdered, need to be our advocates in the East. So if most Pakistani American Muslims, most Persian American or Lebanese American or whatever, understood and agreed with us about our civil liberties, then they can push in their own respective countries. We have America in general has an outside influence, and American Muslims correspondingly also have an outside influence in other countries. And so we need to convince American Muslims to stand up for our rights and how it benefits them to do so as well. So one of the strategies is to engage with them directly and talk to them directly about it. So that's sort of what we were trying to do at ISNA.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so before we get into the whole Hilton stuff, this was one of the most fun experiences I had, especially the people that you picked to come there. Like, they were all amazing. And, I hope I get the chance to work with them again. There was such a great team. But one part of it, I remember that I started, pointed the microphone at a lady and asked her if I could talk to her. And she said, I don't speak English. I speak Arabic. And I remember it was good. It was a good thing that we spent some time before the whole thing, because I remember that Lena speaks Arabic. So I was like, Lena, I need
a bunch of them. Dara, Lena, Yasmin.
Yeah, but Lena was the closest to me at that point. Yeah. So I got Lena came there and they started speaking in Arabic, and I was like switching the microphone between them, and it was such a passionate discussion, and I had no idea what was going on, but I was like, wow, this seems so good. I can't wait for the subtitles of this to show up.
But that's the thing. So we have people from, in EXMNA, about 45 different ethnic backgrounds, and correspondingly language, and, it allows other people to engage. So over there were Yemeni women that...
I thought Islam was just one race.
That's only in America.
Okay, never mind. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. There you go.
But there were Yemeni American Muslims that were attending ISNA, and we had Yemeni people that were there on our side, and they were engaging with them directly. We had Syrian Americans, we had Saudi Americans, we had Armin. So...
Armin American. I'm Canadian.
Armin American.
Honorary deputizing.
I'm my own guy.
Yeah. Much harder to dismiss somebody that you recognize as being a mirror of you, being similar to you, versus some random unknown.
Right. We had, I don't know how much, as long as it's not about the Hilton stuff, can I say anything?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So one thing that we couldn't catch on camera, that was such an amazing experience, because so we went to two girls and we're like, hey, can we speak to you? And they're like, you're sure? And we're like, are you guys Muslims? And they were like, yeah. And they were like, actually, we can't answer that question on camera. And these were girls that showed up to go to ISNA, right? With their family. And we were like, okay, we turn off the camera. And these are, okay.
Did you get that part on camera? When they said,
but we can't release that part.
Not,
right? But then they said, we're actually not Muslim. We don't believe in this stuff, but we can't say that because our family. And we were like, and I think Ghada went and grabbed the pamphlet. I don't know who did that, but I think it was Ghada. But we were like, okay, you girls should you girls are ex-Muslims. You guys are ex-Muslim. And they were like, we told them, like, there's so many of us out there, like, come join. So we recruited like two. They were so nice.
There were a bunch. There were also, so one of the people there, Hazar, is gay, and she engaged with a bunch of gay ex-Muslims that were there as well.
Right.
And they were attending ISNA. They were in the.
So imagine how many ex-Muslims are there.
They were closeted, like they were attending as Muslims, though.
Right?
Exactly.
But you don't. Okay, so people think if you are a Muslim, most Muslims don't. They're just Muslim, nominal Muslim. Like they're just Muslim, and they don't actively do Muslim stuff. They don't pray. They don't fast. They're just Muslim. So if you actually are attending ISNA, you're an active Muslim, right? But at
not
ISNA,
necessarily. So it's a social. It goes back to community.
That's what your understanding is. That's what my understanding is.
Yeah, that's what the understanding is. Yeah, of course.
Until you go there and you see at ISNA, which is an Islamic conference, you have closeted ex-Muslims at ISNA, which is amazing. Imagine how many.
Exactly what you would expect by the Pew data, right? You would expect 1 in 4. You would a bunch of there.
Yeah.
Jim is asking that in the live chat. He's asking any idea what percentage of EXMNA are. Oh no, that's different question. I will ask that later, Jim. But how many people are leaving Islam in North America based on
according to Pew, it's 23%, 23.6 or something like that.
Holy fuck, that's huge. Okay,
yeah.
Do you know what?
So in that, they also said that a majority of them, actually, Armin, to your credit, they a large percentage of that is actually Iranians. Iranians tend to be more ex-Muslim than other people as well.
Oh, really?
So,
I didn't know that.
Yeah. But it's still massive. I mean, 23%. This is, according to Pew, just last year, right? I mean, 23% of Muslims or young Muslims people were raised in North America. They have left the religion. They don't associate with Islam anymore.
Which is roughly similar to what you see with Christians as well. So it's a broader phenomena that is affecting us as well. People are leaving religion in general as you understand religion.
Yeah. Did you see that? Have you guys, I don't know if you guys have seen and in our episode with Andrew Seidel, he told us about the
you
Dan
guys, I was there.
Yeah. No. You know the Dan Barker episode with Oprah in 1984?
Right, yeah.
So what I did was I actually watched that, I think just last week or something for the first time. And I was watching it and I was thinking, wow, it's come so far since 1984. Like they were essentially pariahs. They were sitting there, they're like, we're atheists. And
people don't, the
audience was just shell-shocked. They were absolutely amazing, and you just don't see that anymore because, irreligion. I mean, even in movies, on TV, I think
in 1990, George Bush Sr. said atheists don't deserve to be American.
I know, And,
I mean, in New York,
when you watch Netflix series, when you see like a lot of that, even the supernatural stuff, like they used to show it's a mystical something happening, but they don't. There's usually they try to connected to nature somehow, like there's some sort of natural phenomenon causing it.
But we haven't done that in the Muslim world because I think a lot of Muslims are for the first time noticing that there is such a thing as ex-Muslims, right? So this is something that we're introducing to Jim in the live chat. One of our patrons, thank you, Jim, for being a patron. He's asking any idea of what percentage of EXMNA are first and second generation immigrants, and does EXMNA serve as a second family for people who find North America as foreign? Oh, there's 3 questions here. It seems like immigrants go all in or get out. True? Okay, so there's 3.
I don't think it's an immigrant thing per se. It's a matter of examining religion. If you're an immigrant or if you're a second generation person, if you examine religion, you tend to leave. I would say we have more people that grew up here than are immigrants, but we have a good mix of both of them. Regarding the other question, for a lot of people, it is family. So that's what community provides, right? A family away from family. And we've had people who have actually met through EXMNA and have gotten married, and their families don't know because both are ostensibly from the same background. So you can't within the closet, they got married, and it's fine. We have people that have moved in together, people that have helped each other out going to college, and a bunch of different things. Same thing you expect from any other community.
Right. So,
yeah, I've noticed that. I think there's an element, when you're talking about exposure, just the fact that, Armin just said that people are just beginning to realize that ex-Muslims exist. And that alone is really powerful.
Yeah.
Even if it pisses you off, when you subconsciously seated in your mind that this thing is actually real. I remember when I was I wrote about this in my book, is when I was in 8th grade is when I met the first guy I ever met in my life who did not believe in God. Yeah. And he was a Swedish guy. And I was like, you guys don't believe in him? He's like, no, God. I'm like, well, why don't you go and steal stuff? And he's like, I don't know, because it's wrong. And I was having this conversation. It was so casual. He's like, he didn't even give a shit about it. He didn't care. Yeah. And then the first time I met an ex-Muslim was actually in my family, and it was around, I think I was in 10th or 11th grade, and I was privately doubting myself, and but I never really talked to anybody about it. And my aunt had died, my eldest aunt, and so this was around the time of her funeral, and her daughters were there. And one of her daughters was like a really outspoken, fuck all this shit, the kind of person. There were all these funeral prayers, and she wasn't taking part of it. So I asked her, and with her was my other cousin who had studied to become an Islamic cleric in Qom, Iran, right? So he wanted to go there. He's super religious. Yeah. So he sat there, and he was trying to console her religiously. And she just said, man, nahi believe kar ye sab bakwas hai, which means that this is all bullshit. Yeah. And this was in Lahore in Pakistan. And I remember being shocked. I'm like, how could someone say that? Like, this actually exists? There are people who don't believe this, even in Islam. And that alone itself, I'm telling it to you right now because it's obviously something that
it affected you. So the same thing happens for most people. When they first encounter it, it affects them. They may be angry.
The exposure. Yeah, just knowing that it exists, is that there's somebody who has thought that way, who's crossed that barrier, is massively powerful.
Okay,
because there's something we're not exposed to.
We need to talk about what happened in. Okay, so can you go take us through? We talked about what we did what EXMNA did in Houston. We took some volunteers. We went there and we talked to Muslims there. We recorded it. When is it coming out, by the way?
I haven't looked into it yet. Probably in the next week or so.
Sweet. So go check out EXMNA's YouTube channel. That is going to come out. It's going to be amazing. So we talked about that, but can you tell us about, because I don't want to talk about, because I don't know what we can say or what we can't say. Can you tell us what happened with the Hilton Hotel and the Starbucks and all that?
So it was, I would say, a simple civil rights violation. But that's more for legal lawyers to decide. Okay. But ultimately what our group, including Armin, were out there handing out pamphlets, and they went for a coffee break. And at the coffee break, there were no cameras. There was a few people that were buying coffee, drinking coffee, and charging their phones and electronics and stuff. And they were asked to leave. And when they asked why, they were told that it's because of the shirts there were. The shirts explicitly said that they were ex-Muslim. In America, at least, you can't discriminate based on belief. You can't eject people simply based on belief. Later, after the fact, when they went back, and this is what there's a recording on YouTube that we put up. This is after they were kicked out. They went back. Armin you weren't there at that point, and went back with a camera. And
wait, I wasn't there originally.
Initially at Starbucks when you guys were kicked, when Hazar and Lena and other people were kicked out.
But I went back.
You went back with them later to ask what happened, and that's where the video is.
Right.
So at that point, they specifically said it was because of the shirts on video.
Yeah.
And so that is, if the reason is that ex-Muslims are offensive or anything else, you can't discriminate based on belief systems.
Right. So devil's advocate, you guys were there raising shit, protesting, being controversial, being provocative. Of course, they're going to kick you out.
There was no protest at the Hilton. There was no protest at the Starbucks. Mm-hmm. In any case, we weren't protesting at all. But even if we were, if you're not protesting, you don't remain a protester into perpetuity. They had gone to buy a cup of coffee. There was no sloganeering. There was no recording. There was no attempt to engage with other customers, disturb other customers. simply purchasing a cup of coffee after a protest that we weren't a part of,
right,
does not make you a protester.
And did they get back to you at all regarding the...
No, they haven't responded yet, surprisingly.
Okay. I mean, imagine if they got kicked out because their shirt said, I'm a Muslim. Ask me why. Or I'm gay, I'm proud. I mean, so what
religious belief in particular is specifically listed out in the Civil Rights Act. You cannot discriminate based on religious belief. You cannot kick out somebody for being Muslim. You cannot kick out somebody for not being Muslim.
So what about people that say, okay, it's a private business. They should be able to decide who they serve.
So that's what the Civil Rights Act was about. Private businesses, places of public accommodation. So as a private business that caters to the public, you can't discriminate between members of the public. So as a Starbucks that caters to the public, they can't discriminate on who they serve and who they don't serve based on religion.
Right. I mean, by the way, I'm happy that I wasn't wearing the shirt because Hazar asked a question in the YouTube. This is public. Yeah. So I'm really glad. I'm really appreciative that Hazar asked this question because that was very damning in my opinion. Let me know what you think. Because Hazar asked, because she was wearing the shirt, I'm an ex-Muslim, ask me why. I wasn't wearing it. And she asked a security guard, can I go in? So even though they referred to the shirt originally, when she asked if I could go in, they said no. And to me, this suggests that it's not wearing the shirt that made them not let us go in, not let us in. It's what the shirt indicated who we are that made them decide us not being able to go in, which is very, I mean, it's very damning. I mean, I can't imagine the people that are making excuses for this, if they would make the same excuses if they said, if Starbucks came out,
if it was a member of a race, if it was a member of a religion,
or we don't serve Muslims, we don't serve Muslims, right? I mean, the fact that they said you're protesting, we told them we're not protesting. We told them that we're, I mean, it was so bizarre. Our camera guy you should have seen his face because you can't see his face in the video. He was like, what the hell? Like, he was like, I don't know why this is happening. Like, he was so confused, as a non-ex-Muslim, like, why would they kick you out? But honestly, I think all of us here agree that if some people were wearing a shirt saying, I'm a Muslim, ask me why, and they kicked them out because of that shirt, we would here defend them. We would be like, no.
So,
yeah, go on.
A few years ago at United on a plane, a Muslim woman was served Diet Coke, but wasn't given the can. She was served in a cup.
I remember this.
Exactly. You remember that because it became an international incident, was covered by everybody.
Right.
And over here, you have somebody explicitly being ejected. And there's silence from the media. There's silence about it entirely, which shows how marginalized ex-Muslims are.
Yeah. So is it, how much of this is... sorry, go ahead, Armin.
No, I just wanted to do a few more devil's advocate points. What if people say? I already, when you went for the pee break, I already mentioned a few of them. But what about this? What's the big deal? Just go to another place and get coffee there.
That's a big deal in the Civil Rights Act.
Yeah, you're kind of pushing it with the devil's advocate stuff.
Basically,
I know.
The Civil Rights Movement was you cannot discriminate. We are all equal citizens in America.
No, but the point,
if you want to roll back the Civil Rights Act, if you want to get back to the point where you had Jim Crow laws, where you had segregation, you had all of these other things that the Civil Rights Act was designed to prevent. If you're okay with with certain places saying that Muslims cannot be served because we don't like them, then okay, fine. Advocate for that position.
Yeah, you're going to tell Muslims that, okay, no, go to another coffee shop. We're not going to serve you here.
Well, I think I think what people don't understand is that when you are not allowed into a place because you're ex-Muslim, it's not just about that place. It's an indication of a bigger problem. You know what I mean? This is like like you said, it's a canary in the mine. This shows that, this is still there. This is the okay group to discriminate against. This is the group that you're allowed to discriminate. You're not allowed to discriminate against gay people, black people, Muslims, Jews, but ex-Muslims, atheists, still allowed, right? So I think what it shows is a bigger problem. Another thing that people say, like, hey, this was their event. You were not invited. They had every right to kick you out. I just quickly respond to that myself. This had nothing to do with the event. This was separate. This was on the other side of the street. We went to inside the convention because the door was open to the public. They asked us to leave the convention and we left. We are not complaining about that because yes, we weren't invited to the convention, but the Starbucks thing, that's completely across the street. It had nothing to do. That was open to public. It had nothing to do with the event. So that's all of the list of comments I've seen I want to bring up. But what about the backlash? I know I don't know if you could talk about this or not, but some of the people that were on the video that you released the video, they got some backlash from friends and family. Can you talk about that?
So generally the way people tend to silence is shaming. Shaming is very, very powerful. So people don't come out as ex-Muslim because they're concerned about how they'll be shamed, how their families will be shamed. This is what honor culture in general does. So I do something wrong, perceived to be wrong, such as being an ex-Muslim. My parents will suffer the consequences. My sisters, my brothers will suffer the consequence. And that's sort of what enforces those norms. So with one of the persons, they were on the video and a family friend went and then told their mother and other friends that this is going on, in a sense, trying to shame them. And that caused a huge rift between them and their family. And this is the person that did it is a well-established, upper-class American Muslim that is involved with a lot of social work with Muslim communities. And he's the one that is doing this. So this is more than a moderate Muslim. It's probably a liberal Muslim, and he is engaging in this honor culture in America, trying to shame people. Even if I wouldn't be surprised if he himself didn't realize that that's what he was doing.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what happened? We can't go into details of that, right?
That's her personal life, in the sense of there was a rift between her mother and her, and they've been trying to resolve that.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Anyway, people tried to these people that were on the video. There was some backlash to it, which is an indication of even the ex-Muslims that are out, they have to deal with a lot of shit from their family, friends, and family. But go ahead.
So the thing is, if your parent is accepting of you, then what will happen, which happened in this case, is your parents will be blamed and shamed by other members of the community in order to coerce them to stop the child.
Right.
So if we can't stop you directly, we'll pressure your parents. If we can't pressure them, we'll pressure people that are close to them. We'll keep going until somebody cracks and forces people to shut up.
This is something that you hear from supportive parents of ex-Muslims. This is how sometimes Michael, I love you and whatever you do, whatever you want to believe, whatever you want to do. But why are you putting me in this position? Why are you embarrassing us? Why are you bringing so much shame to the family? Even if they are completely supportive, they don't say that, they don't any of that. Right.
As a child, you see it happening to them, where they are being shamed, where they are being attacked, where their friends are ostracizing them, where opportunities are being lost to them. A lot of people work with other Muslims, and their livelihood is dependent upon that, and you lose that livelihood when you're stigmatized in that way.
Yeah, imagine being put in a position imagine being put in a position that you think that you are making your parents suffer because of you coming out, that's a very, okay, but go on. Sorry, Ali.
And I was saying that I think it's especially true for, girls and women, female ex-Muslims, because there's this idea that if they have left Islam, they're doing it because they want to drink or they want to be with boys or they want to go, and they're loose charactered, in quotes, right? And they're
I've noticed that amoral. The reaction to ex-Muslim girl, you're so right. Women ex-Muslims deal with a lot of protective Muslims that are than male Muslims.
It's not protected. It's the same thing. They view women as their property.
Yes,
and Muslim women are our property. And how dare they?
Yes,
how dare they do? It's
toxic.
It's a matter of when we get the death threats that we get. I mean, the ones that they usually come from Pakistan, because of
and Malaysia for some fucking reason.
Yeah,
a lot of places.
A lot of places. But for me, the ones that come in, especially in Urdu Pakistan. With me, there's just threats of violence. You know, you come here, you know, you don't set foot in Pakistan again because blah, blah, blah. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. But the kind of stuff that comes to Lishba is just all sexualized rape, violence, like insane.
But even the ones that are coming my way, if it's to me directly,
to your wife, right?
Yeah, it's either to me violence or to female loved one sexual. So even when it comes at me, like they target somebody that had nothing to do with it, but it's because it shows you about their view of the position of women. Basically, I'm going to make you suffer by destroying your property, making it impure or something. I don't know. It's fucking.
Yeah, it's really not. I mean, it's militaristic, right? Like they use that sexual violence as a weapon of war,
right?
And so this is just it's actually amazing, you know, what they do. I mean, there are people who have, I think, with one of the things that Lishba got, and I think she posted it publicly. It was this guy who essentially just told her, he was saying that, you know, you're betraying Islam, you're betraying our values. He was talking about values in Islam and Pakistan, everything, and then he sent a dick pic. Like he actually just said, so we posted it. She posted it, like obviously cropped and everything. She can see everything. It pretty much everyone started commenting on it. Everybody was shocked. Like this guy, he's talking about values and he said that here, maybe this will fix you. And then he put this thing. And then his sister came up and she's like, you have to forgive him. Please take down the picture. And she was writing to me and she's writing, and even his sister. And then she'd go back and forth between getting really angry and then pleading. And the whole thing was just, it was such a joke. I was like, I can't believe this is real.
Okay, live stream question for Muhammad. Can I read that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Question for Muhammad Syed. Muslims in the US seem to fall more on a liberalistic interpretations. Correct me if I'm wrong. How often has EXMNA encountered Muslims who have tried to enforce the death penalty? So that's, I think there's two questions. Are Muslims in North America more liberal? And how many death threats do you get?
Same as everybody in this space, we get a decent amount of death threats pretty regularly. But regarding Muslims in America, they are more liberal, sure. But compared to what? That is one thing that is often missed. Compared to the most conservative religion in the world, which is Islam in Pakistan and other countries where vast majorities believe that it's okay to kill us, yes, they are more liberal. They're more accepting of gay rights than, say, Muslims in Saudi Arabia or Muslims in Pakistan. But compared to the average American, no, they're not. Their values align much more closely with evangelical Christians. Right. So we shouldn't be grading them on a curve. We should be happy that, yes, American Muslims are better than Muslims around the world. They're the most liberal around the world, but they're nowhere near as liberal as average American. And we need to change that. And there's no reason that that can't change. It's a matter of us talking to them and engaging with them and changing their perspective.
Yeah, because all of us grew up like, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. All of us had
anecdotal evidence,
to some extent, you know, Muslim, right? It's like this idea whenever anybody says, well, Islam's the fastest growing religion in the world, they're actually, what they're saying is that Muslims are the fastest breeding people in the world. You know, it's not that there's this assumption whenever they talk about a census or whenever they talk about these sort of projections that the kid of everyone born in a Muslim family is going to be Muslim. But clearly that's not the case, at least in 1 in 4 cases. And in North America, like you said.
To that, I also say the fact that Muslims in Islamic countries are less liberal than Muslims in non-Islamic countries shows that it shows that Islam is a bad influence, because that means that Muslims that are less Islamic, they are
exposed to other ideas, are able to adopt those other ideas.
Exactly. That means that shows the influence of competing ideas other than Islam, and the fact that Muslims in Islamic countries are worse shows that Islam is always a bad influence. Less Islam is good for you.
Less religion in general.
Less religion. Yeah, but less religion is good for you. But then if you say less religion, then I'm going to say, well, less dogma. And then if you say, well, less dogma, then I'm going to say less bad ideas. So,
agreed entirely.
And then less of the metaphorical substrate. Also, don't forget that.
All right. So, do you have? Mars is asking if you have any branches in Europe? Well, no, because it's ExMuslims of North America. But do you guys have are you guys now reaching, like, does your activism include ex-Muslims outside of North America in any way?
We've been working with groups in other countries, helping them bootstrap and that want to follow our model. So
Right.
we've been working behind the scenes in that, not publicly, but we're planning on doing that in a more public way over the next few months and years.
Right. And I here's what I'm going to pitch as a member. If people say, well, you're ex-Muslim of North America, why are you spreading ex-Muslim activism in other countries? I would say, well, the thing is that North America is a great hub for us to shoot like missiles of,
Yeah.
No, I mean,
So,
basically what we have.
when we do things like this, we get requests from around the world from people that look at it and are inspired by it and want to do the same thing.
Right.
So it's not that we're pushing something on it. We're doing something that other people want to do as well. And we're helping them achieve that. So we have this annual get-together that we informally refer to as KafirCon. And we have ex-Muslims from around the country come out and we have a big party and people get to know each other. And it's a large community building exercise.
I want to be part of that next time.
Sure. So, but when we talk about that publicly and we posted social media posts and stuff, we get people from Scandinavia, from the UK, from Muslim countries talking about, oh my God, this is so amazing. We want to do this too. How do we achieve what you've achieved? This is mind-blowingly wonderful. So
right,
it's more... Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Sorry, I let you finish. Sorry. By the way, I know a lot of patrons tell me that I interrupt people too much. I'm working on it, I promise. Go.
It's more about inspiring people to make them their own lives better. And we're doing what we're doing over here, and that's inspiring people around the world.
Right. So, but you're inspiring. Okay, so I think here's what I'm pitching. There's two separate groups of other countries. The free countries, right? And for free countries, what I think you're doing is inspiring to make their own ex-Muslim groups and use your model and teach them how to do it. But for Islamic countries, what I think you could be doing is the same thing you mentioned with the Somali guy, right? So what you're doing is that you are providing a hub for ex-Muslims from like Somalia or Iran to in a free country to do their activism and provide guidance or provide inspirations or provide a voice to for ex-Muslims activities inside their own countries. So you basically use North America as a base of operations, but for activism in Islamic countries. So beyond providing a model and actually, reaching out to ex-Muslims in Iran. If you ever do that, I would like to join the Iran operation, whatever you guys. So that's what I'm pitching here. Go on.
So sorry, Muhammad, I'm going to ask, there are two patron questions over here that were related to what I was going to ask a little while ago, which I just remembered now. So I guess I'll piggyback off of them. So Jim is saying a 2017 Pew Research Center poll found a sizable shift in the views of American Muslims when it comes to homosexuality and found them to be more accepting of it than white evangelicals. And Mars is saying, he's saying he was surprised at the answer. I thought American Muslims were more liberal than evangelical Christians.
They're roughly the same. They're within a few percentage points of each other. They are more liberal, but it's statistically insignificant degree.
So I think that a lot of that is also a little bit of a recent phenomenon. It's confusing because what's happening now politically in the United States is, you have Trump as president. He's sort of antagonized a lot of Muslims. So you see a lot of Muslims, even the Linda Sarsour types, who does share most of her values with evangelical Christians, at least her social values. But she is allied with people like Bernie Sanders, who, in terms of, and Bernie Sanders, like his agenda, being accepting of homosexuality, being, more sort of super leftist liberal. And I think that there's also, so there's a little bit of confusion over there in terms of what they ally with, right?
So there's a difference between adopting the language. And if you look at Linda Sarsour, she talks about gay rights, for example, but she talks about it in an American context. She doesn't talk about it in a universalist context. I've never seen Linda Sarsour talk about gay rights in Saudi Arabia and Pakistan and Palestine. It's not about gay rights. It's about appeasing to people that think gay rights matter for white people. It's not about universally that everybody should have the same rights.
Right. That's the thing. So there is also a different, this is a little more complicated too, because in North America, even the Muslim community overall tend to have more households where both the man and the woman are equally educated, even compared to the average American. So there's some measures on which you will see those things when it comes to professional degrees, education, ethics, and things like that. You're not going to, they're also going to be sort of socioeconomically more well off than, say, Muslim communities in other Western countries like France or like
part of that is how hard it is to get into America. It's hard to come all the way across the world to over here versus Europe, which is basically across the Mediterranean.
And you also don't have the social services that you do over there. So, over there are people I know in, for example, in Lahore, in my hometown in Pakistan, who just worked in stores. They were, what they call dukandar. Yeah. And then they went to the UK and they're like, hey, the stuff, the life I have on social services right now, free education, healthcare, living, all that is way better than the life I had living as a private citizen in Pakistan. So they also sort of become complacent. The US, they can't do that. The US, they eventually have to get up and assimilate and make something of themselves. So
there's elements in America to survive.
You have to, yeah. So, so that now moving on to what I was going to say, you talked about how, Muslims, they weren't covering this incident that happened with you guys at ISNA the way that they covered the Diet Coke incident, right?
Yeah. Or the two black guys that were kicked out of Starbucks. That blonde infidel in the live chat is saying, so disappointing that this story hasn't been covered by the mainstream media.
Right, I completely agree. So a lot of that, I think, and when we had Sarah on, we touched on this briefly also, is that I have found that, some mainstream atheist conferences, like I remember I did a talk once, and this guy who works with a lot of mainstream atheist conferences, many of them, he said that they're shying away from ex-Muslims, especially nowadays, because they'll do their regular atheist conference, but they'll not have the ex-Muslims on there because they feel like they're going to get lumped in with the Trump crowd. So they're avoiding them. And then on the other hand, the far right side, if they are coming and they're using us and trying to use us as pawns or as mouthpieces or whatever. So many ex-Muslims don't want to deal with that because they left a far right ideology. They don't want to go to another far right ideology. So that kind of leaves ex-Muslims in the middle, especially in this political climate. So how much of it, the fact that this story wasn't covered or stories like this about ex-Muslims aren't covered as much, do you think is because of that neither side really wants to?
So
we're kind of stuck in the
middle.
Some
of the right-wing groups did cover it. So they're far more reliable in covering ex-Muslim issues because they want to shine a spotlight when something goes regarding this issue in particular. With the left, they want to shy away from showing Muslims in a negative light because they have this issue where you can't, if I support this person, that person must be good. I can't support bad people. So if Muslims are shown to be bad in any way, then I can't really support them. So you have to hide all the negatives. Instead of civil liberties are for everybody, we support everybody's civil rights. It doesn't matter what your opinion is. And the left has moved away from that, which causes a lot of these issues.
I know that's what the tragedy is, I think. I mean, you have the left that is kind of shying away from the ex-Muslims and moving away from it, distancing themselves. Then you have a lot of ex-Muslims who understandably want to distance themselves from the far right, who may be covering them in a way that, that they don't want to be covered, right? So there's and then when the far right covers them, then the left distances themselves even more. They're like, oh, okay, these guys are heroes of the Trump crowd, so why should we cover that? So that's
it's a negative vicious cycle, but ultimately we're the ones that have to break it. They won't. And more importantly, it's our families, our part of the world, our cousins that are in trouble, and we are the ones that have the power to actually change that. I don't care what the left thinks. I don't care what the right thinks. It's on us to save Muslims from this bad ideology that has held them captive. And there are plenty of us. Again, 1 in 4 raised Muslims are no longer Muslim. And I think that the biggest failing right now is of liberal Muslims and ex-Muslims that aren't stepping up and demanding change. So right now, the largest, most powerful Muslim organization is CARE, Council of American Islamic Relations. They talk about themselves as being a civil rights group, but they do civil rights work, but they're also a religious group. Why isn't there a counterpart of that is secular, that is talking about Muslim civil rights and rejects any religious overtones at all? There are secular Muslims out there, there are ex-Muslims out there, but they're not organizing to make that change happen. The same thing happens around the world. We are the ones that are letting go of it and letting fundamentalists and theocrats take over. It's our fault.
So what do we? So that's one of the. And this is a question, Armin, for you, me, and Muhammad, all three of us. what do we do? How do we, because the reason CARE is so influential, the reason that Linda Sarsour is so influential and people like that are so prominent in American politics is because they've started from a grassroots thing. They've, organized, they have conferences every year. They have lobbying groups. They're involved in politics. Now, many of them are running for Congress. Some of them actually have a good chance of winning. So, that is something that's happening. Is there something similar that we can do that even if we don't say, even if we make it not just about ex-Muslims, but also sort of secular leading Muslims or Muslims that believe in separation of religion, say whatever it is.
No, fuck that, ex-Muslims.
No.
We can
Armin, I'm not saying
ally with them. So
ally with them, but we don't have to change what we're focusing on.
Yeah, sure. So ultimately, civil society changes happen when you have a
go on.
wide variety of groups.
Lobbying and I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, when it comes let me just say this. When it comes to allying, I ally with fucking Muslims if I have to. Okay, but sure. That's fine. But when it comes to what we push for, I think what we're pushing for is two things: supporting ex-Muslims, protecting them against discrimination and abuse, and also unapologetically advocate for people leaving religion, leaving Islam.
No, Armin, I agree with that. From an activist perspective, we're all on board with that. That's fine. We have, you have Atheist Republic, there's ex-Muslims in North America, there's all of us are, when it comes to that. I'm talking about actually getting into the political realm, getting into the lobbying thing.
Muslims have been doing that for a few decades.
Right.
And secular people from our background haven't been doing that. We've dropped the ball.
Yeah,
and we need to start, so we need ex-Muslims or secular Muslims that, or nominal Muslims, however you want to phrase it, that are running for public office, that are in academia, that are in political circles in the left and in the right, that take ownership of this issue. When a Muslim stands up and says you can't criticize Islam or you can't draw Muhammad, you need people from our background standing up and saying, I will draw it, screw you. And I will defend Muslim civil liberties. When CARE shows up, you need secular groups out there that are advocating for those Muslim civil liberties, for those Muslim rights, and also pushing back whenever CARE oversteps and starts defending Islam. And
I asked Sarah when she was here on the podcast whether she's going to run for office, because whenever I hear her talk and everything, I think that she's just she really is. I'm not kidding at all. This is a huge compliment. I think that, so is there have you guys thought of that vision?
We haven't thought. So a lot of what we've done so far has been,
or at least identifying people that you can say, okay,
no, fuck that. Sarah, it should be Sarah. I don't think anybody has any other chance.
I'm just using that as her, but trying to find.
Get close to what? Okay, go on.
No, I disagree with you, Armin. There, in the sense that
there's people. No, you need more than one.
Sarah is amazing. I would say she's the most well-spoken person that we have around. But if the Pew survey is to be accurate, then 1 in 4 raised Muslims have left the faith, and there are lots of amazing people out there that aren't engaged. They need to be engaged. They need to be activated, and they need to stand up and do this. It can't be on the shoulders of one person. It needs to be thousands and thousands of people, if not hundreds of thousands of people advocating for this.
Right.
So, is it accurate to say that ex-Muslims of North America is also now moving towards actually promoting, people abandoning Islam and fighting Islam, not as an
organization. As an individual, I always promote that, but as an organization, we're still focused on apostate and civil rights.
Yeah.
So protecting ex-Muslims rather than pushing for people becoming ex-Muslims. That's mostly your focus.
From an organizational perspective, yes.
Okay.
So,
what if your members, while active as
so the membership is basically support groups and support communities. They can do whatever they want. We're no ideological.
Can they do that? Can they do that as a representative of EXMNA? Like, for example, let's say I'm volunteering for EXMNA and I want to invite Muslims to a debate as on a platform as a volunteer of EXMNA. So would that be something that EXMNA would accept? Or would be like, no, that's not part of what we do? So
we are talking about actually going in that direction and having debates. Yay. The problem right now is most Muslims aren't on that page. So I had I don't know if you would call it a debate or a conversation with Yasser Ghazi a few years ago. And we started off within 5 minutes. I had said a few negative things about Islam, and he got up and said, I'm leaving this. I did not come here to have Islam maligned. And yeah, exactly. So I had to dial back and not engage on that topic. But
no, you should be like, no, we'll get the fuck out there if you can't take the heat.
I didn't invite them. American Atheists had invited them. And,
okay.
I was a guest there. But ultimately, we need Muslims to engage. And the only way that'll happen is that when they sense how dangerous for them ex-Muslims are, in the sense of, right, it's starting to dawn on them that 1 in 4. That a lot of people are leaving.
Now they want to. This is
exactly. Like, so we're getting to that
recently.
Stage.
Yeah, they're getting to that stage where, at that point they could afford to walk out. They'd be like, well, if I don't talk to him, nobody else is going to fucking talk to him either. But now that's not the case. That's not the case. Now the thing is, you're being covered. You've got college events happening. You've got coverage in the BBC. You've got all kinds of stuff happening. And now and I'm hearing these imams saying, I heard this lecture. I think someone posted about this guy who's just Bilal Phillips. People are
Bilal Phillips. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
So he talked about people leaving Islam and how horrible it is, and he's encountering that. And he talked about being in Toronto and encountering an ex-Muslim and the conversation he had and how harrowing that was.
Way to go, fucking Toronto, man. But
that person that he talked to is an EXMNA member. I know him.
Good.
So there are so many of us out there that we're poking in 100 different ways. I've been hearing pretty much every week or every other week from mosques around the country, in Toronto, in Houston, and Atlanta, where in sermons they're talking about ex-Muslims. They're talking about how horrible it is. And
there's a course on how to deal with us.
There are multiple courses. Mosques are holding courses now, anti-atheism courses.
Right.
And to me, that's amazing. Yes,
that is really amazing, man. It really is. I mean, if you just think about how.
Just 5 years ago, this was not a thing.
No.
Yeah,
Muslims used to see Christianity as their main competition. Now they're saying ex-Muslims as their main competition. Atheist ex-Muslims as their main competition, which is good. It means we're doing something right. But go on, Ali.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So Mars is saying, do you guys have any support from liberal news networks, NPR, CNN at all? So I'm going to quickly
here and there.
Yeah. Sorry, no, I was saying that I know that with ex-Muslims in North America, there have been several. I know you had a really great segment with Ayman. Was it Ayman Ismail from Slate? You had the BBC coverage.
Oh, yeah, that was great.
I've seen you in the Economist. You've been covered in a lot of different papers. In my case, Mars, the same thing. My book received a really good review in the New York Times from Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who's one of the most famous sort of American Muslims in the world. So there have been, I do tend to get some coverage from, I've been on NPR and CNN as well. So there are liberal networks that are doing it. This is, I guess,
it's so small. Come on.
Yeah, it is small, but it is bigger than it was a little while ago. The other thing is there are some very prominent liberals who do talk about this, like, for instance, Bill Maher. Bill Maher is somebody who does speak about this, but even though right now he wants everybody to laser focus on Trump and get him out of power, and he doesn't want to focus on anything else until he does that. So he hasn't talked about this for a while. Right. But there are, and I think some people are warming up to it. If I look at just sort of my followership, there are a lot of very, very prominent, very public liberals, like actors.
But you know what? This is why I like what the new direction that EXMNA is taking. Because fuck the liberals, okay? I mean the leftists, the so-called liberals. We're going directly to Muslims. I think the key ingredient here, not just for North America, but also to signal to the rest of the Muslim world, is to have Muslims that are okay with us shitting on Islam. Right? Like big Muslims names or even small ones.
I don't think they'll be okay with that per se, but we're forced to accept that is the way the world is. And
no. I know even ones that are actually even okay with it. They're like, I'll shit on atheism, you shit on Islam, and we could go have kebab with each other.
Yeah, Armin's very good with this. Armin will go and say, he's like, he'll actually convince them that it's okay for him to shit because they're shitting on atheism. They're like, so wouldn't you want to convert me? That's why I'm trying to talk to you. And that actually is surprisingly effective. I mean, it's, he's very good with that. It's the kind of approaches that work are insane. But I wanted to get to, so I was talking about like all Armin, I think we have to do both, right? But I was talking about all of the sort of liberal networks who are starting to cover people like us.
The thing is that a lot of the people on the left take their cues from Muslims. right? So if we just bypass the left and just go to Muslims and get a lot of Muslims that are saying like, okay, yeah, let's have a conversation between Muslims and ex-Muslims and let ex-Muslims come and tell their grievances against Islam. I think a lot of leftists are going to be like, what the fuck?
No, but you can do both. I completely agree that we should do that, but we can do both. Because here's the thing. I mean, we can sit there. We've been talking about the regressive left for a really long time. We've been having issues with that a lot. But do we keep on scoring points against them? Or do we reach out? Or
scoring points
do it
against
one
who?
of the ways? No, do we, in our conversation, in our discourse, are we just going to keep on scoring? I love scoring points. That's fun. We're going to keep on doing that. Like,
Ali, you probably have read Iqbal, right? Shikwa and Jawab Shikwa.
No, I actually haven't. I read the English version of the reconstruction of Islamic thought.
Okay, so there's a line, खुदी को कर बुलंद इतना कि हर तकदीर से पहले खुदा खुद बंदे से पूछे पता तेरे रज़ा क्या है.
रज़ा क्या है, yeah.
So elevate yourself to such an extent that the gods themselves ask you, what do you desire? So I would say that it's on us to get to such a point that we cannot be ignored.
Right.
So to give you a concrete example of that, one of the guys that he's been a member for some time. He's gay. He's Somali. He was kidnapped and taken to Kenya. We were able to rescue him.
Oh, yeah. I know. Yeah, you have a video about him, too.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, yeah.
We were able to rescue him. He is in college. He wrote in his college paper that again about what happened. And we produced a video about him, and both of those went viral. And as a result of that, BBC then covered him and what happened. And as a result of that, then newspapers in Kenya covered it. And then as a next level result of that, Kenyan authorities raided a bunch of these conversion camps and shut them down. So we started the first level effect, and it was picked up by other people and then further picked up, and that caused massive change to happen. So ultimately, it's on us to make it so uncomfortable that people cannot ignore us.
Right. So what are some ways? Give us some.
One of the things that was just what you said. It's not necessarily about saying, who we are, but it's about the issue, taking on an issue, like gay people from the Muslim world. Like if you would take that issue, that's something that other people can get behind as well. And it won't just be ex-Muslims, but everybody will know that it's the ex-Muslims.
Yeah, but we have those movements. I want the ex-Muslim movement to go. Here's what
I don't think.
Yeah, go on.
We really have those movements.
Yeah.
So if you look at the progressive Muslim movement, if you look at the gay Muslim movement, they're tiny. Ex-Muslims have become more powerful than them in a span of 5 years, and they've been around much, much longer.
Okay. Yeah. But I'm saying we need to have some focus here, and there are some bonuses as side effect that will happen because of what we're doing. But the main thing that I'm getting out of this is that I don't want, I think the first step is for Muslims to be like, okay, fine, you're ex-Muslim. I'll accept you as an ex-Muslim, right? But I want to push for more. I want to push for like, okay, fine, you're ex-Muslim, and you get to not only criticize Islam, you get to mock Islam, you get to insult my prophet, right? That's how far I want to go with this.
I want to go there too, but it'll take time, right? We need to convince people that it is okay, and we need to convince them on why it's okay. For some reason, when the same thing happened in the West, when heresy was an issue in the 18th century, 17th century, they pushed and they pushed and they pushed until the laws were forced to change.
Right.
They created magazines. There was a free thinker in England who specifically was created to mock religion. They mocked Moses, they mocked Jesus, they mocked God, they made comics about it, and they went to jail again and again until the laws changed.
Right.
They presume that they can convince their fellow citizen, and they can leverage that to change the laws. But for some reason, when it comes to us, it's presumed that we can't change. The pressure won't work on us.
Why is the discussion so different for us?
I would say to a certain extent racism. That brown people are inherently religious, and that is who they are. We shouldn't push them.
Yeah,
right.
It is. It is. It's the same thing. It's the racism of lowered expectations. Like they can't take it. Yeah.
Really, guys? Do you guys think that's the main factor, or is it something about race, or is it something about they think the nature of Islam that is more dogmatic?
I don't think it's the nature of Islam. It's these people hold religion very dear to them. It's a core part of their identity, and who are we to push that part of their identity if they hold it so dear?
It is a race. It's like even white guilt and
we said it at the same time.
Yeah, it's the same thing. Yeah,
is it part of the colonial? Like they think like, okay, yeah, fight Christianity. That's bullshit. But if they fight Islam as part of their, colonial past,
colonialism is okay if it's done by a white person.
Or where does it stand? White people, when they colonized the world, it was horrible, but brown people did it before them, and that was a-okay. We should accept that. We should celebrate that sort of colonialism. Persia was conquered, Pakistan was conquered, India was conquered. That was a good thing. Yeah, what the hell?
Actually, the Islamic imperialism has a much stronger chokehold after a much longer time on people in South Asia, for example, than
today
the empire ever did.
Okay, but do you guys think really that this is the main reason behind why kicking out ex-Muslims out of Starbucks gets less coverage than kicking out Muslims out of Starbucks? Do you think that's
a variety of things? It's not just one thing.
What are those variety of things? Like,
one is political. What's going on with Trump, for example? One is wanting to protect a minority group that is unfairly demonized.
Right.
Yeah.
But again, what I said earlier, there's a difference between protecting the rights of a minority group and adopting their prejudices. So the minority group is prejudiced against us, fine, whatever. That doesn't mean that white America adopts those prejudices.
But the thing is that they actually have provided a great environment for the minority that they want to protect, for them to be discriminated. Because, I mean, a lot of the left, again, I don't want to say, there's a lot of great people on the left. There are a lot of great people on the right. When we say far left, we don't mean all of left. When we say far right, we don't mean all of right, okay? That's the de facto position, okay? So not all. But a lot of people on the left, by trying to protect Muslims, they have created an environment where the main voices against Islam became bigots against Muslims. I mean, they created an environment where the far right became popular.
Going back to the racism angle, the idea that there would be representative of a minority community is a racist idea.
Right.
And that is widespread. Muslim representatives. When do you hear about white representatives? Who is the white representative? Is it Pat Falwell? Do we go to the most conservative, most religious person to be the representative of white people? Is that who we accept? No. We understand that there's a diversity of thought among white people. There's a diversity of opinion, diversity of religious experiences. But for some reason, with people from Muslim backgrounds, that all gets erased, and you elevate the hijab as the wonderful thing. You elevate the most religious people out there as representatives of this group.
Right. I know. Actually in Houston, what happened at both sides of the street, to me, it captured a summary of everything that is going on in the political atmosphere. Because we had ISNA at this side of the street, and on the other side of the street, we had protests, right? And on this side of the street, we had a lot of Muslims going inside and outside of the convention. On the other side of the street, we had communists, far left, and people that look like Antifa, versus Christians that are anti-Muslim Christians, right? And these two groups were fighting about Islam with each other, while the Muslim, without actually engaging with any of the Muslims. And we ex-Muslims came there. We were actually on the other side of the street where Muslims were. We were talking to Muslims. And I think this was perfect. This was the perfect, like, look, these guys are fighting over this, and they're not even talking to Muslims. They're just having their own, insane fights with each other. They're just shouting over each other.
Look, we're offended on behalf of
the world revolves around us. White people matter, and the world revolves around white people. So we just look at ourselves.
Right. It was so, okay. So it was so bizarre because, I mean, one thing that was really great about this was when we were told to leave the convention, we were really worried because we thought, how are we going to be able to talk to Muslims? Because most of them, I mean, outside was hot, inside was air conditioned, and we thought we're not going to be able to talk to any Muslims, right? But because of all this crazy loud noise outside, a lot of the Muslims from the convention were curious to see what's happening. So they kept coming out to check it. And we got to interview them. And a lot of the people, when we went to them and asked them, like, are you guys with these protesters? Like, no, we're not with them. And we started, and they asked us what the protest is about. And they were freaked out by the fact that a whole bunch of people with the communist symbols were singing the azan. And they were like, what the fuck is going on here? And like, wait, those crazy people are supporting us? Like, it was so amazing. And then the Black Panther showed up with giant guns, and they said we were yelling black power. And they came in, and the police was freaking out. And then they went and joined the communists. to protect them against the Christians. It was amazing.
So this is a party that I need to be in on next time. I need to go on this. This is going to be fucking
As you said, this captures a larger issue that there are a bunch of nutty groups that are fighting over stuff.
Right.
And we just need to ignore them and engage with the people that matter, whose hearts matter. We need to win and change.
You're right. It's a real life lesson in how we should be going about things. It's like, let them just do their own thing. But I mean, this is my Facebook feed in real life. It was amazing. Yeah. In a way, it's weird that just looking at that scenario, it seems like both Muslims and ex-Muslims are kind of pawns for
them. They want us to be, but if we ignore them entirely and do our own thing, who cares what they're doing?
That's, I tell people are like, why are you worried about there's all this stuff that's happening? Trump is demonizing Muslims. Why are you talking about criticizing? Shouldn't you change your approach and all this stuff? And I was telling them, like, it's not, the US isn't the only fucking country in the world. There are 50 countries in the world that are Muslim majority, like in the OIC. And
if America if America self-destructs entirely, it's gone, deleted, whatever. You still have 2 billion people that believe in religious nonsense that needs to be solved.
It is going to, and there are a lot of problems. I mean, there's a lot of issues. One of the reasons that we talk about Islam is because there are unique issues related to Islam. That's why we've discussed that. But, at the same time, that's what we grew up with. That's what we know about. And
that's what we care about, because our loved ones are trapped. And then we see how much people suffer day in and day out in 100 different ways.
And I was on Killian Korth. Killian Korth is one of our, he's got a podcast called In the Know with Killian Korth. I just recorded an episode with him. He's a patron of this podcast. He's also doing a 100-mile run for EXMNA to raise money for you guys. So, that's a shout out.
We're a nonprofit 501c3. We're doing a lot of work and need support.
Yes. Need support. So everybody, you hear that. So he was, I was talking to him and I totally fucking forgot what I was going to say. What were you talking about right before I mentioned that shout out?
Ignoring the left, ignoring the right, doing our own thing. The Muslim world is more important. We have 2 billion people out there that...
Oh, the 2 billion people out there. Yeah, so I was saying that, this is the experience that we know. The Muslims are the main victims of, Islamic terrorism and all of that stuff. But there are many, that's what we talk about. It's because it's something that we know about. And that's also a dialogue that's needed. That's not happening as much in the Muslim world as it used to.
It's also the people we care about. Most everybody I care about in the world is Muslim, is from that background, live in those countries. And I don't want to have that misery perpetuated generation over generation over generation. We've seen how much the West has advanced due to embracing reason, due to separating church and state. And there's no reason we can't do the same. A lot of the advancements happened because people were able in the West to question things, to challenge things. And they changed the world. There's no reason we can't do the same. If that happens, could it not be that in 100, 200 years, you have the Muslim world leading the world in scientific advancements? There's no reason. We're just as intelligent as everybody else. We're just trapped in this stupid superstition from 1400 years ago.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, that's the problem. So I wanted to, you were talking about loved ones and everything, most of the loved ones, so and feel free to say no if you don't want to talk about this. So, but I want to actually talk about you and your background, because I've heard you do a lot of interviews, but I haven't really it seems like you don't talk about it that much, but I kind of wanted to get into what was your background? How did you grow up? How did you come up with this conclusion that you wanted to leave Islam, and why did you become such a vocal advocate for it? And how is your relationship with your family? Or how did it all happen?
So generally, I don't talk about myself much because there's bigger things to talk about. But I grew up in Karachi, same as you. Moved here after college, and I was, I don't know, from an American standard, a conservative person. I believed in religion and followed it to the extent I could. Actually, I don't know if you remember this in Pakistan. They used to have Shab-e Qadr, Shab-e Miraj, where you used to it was a great day. Yeah, exactly. So in high school, I remember all of our friends, everybody planning out that night what prayers we'll do and staying up all night praying. And that was the norm where I was, at least. Yeah. But in any case, moving here, I was still pretty conservative until I had a bunch of multiple friends that went super Wahhabi type conservative. So I I believed in science and humanism to a great extent. I believed in liberal values. I believed in religion 100%, but I believe that Islam itself advocated for those values. I hadn't looked into Islam as deeply as I should have. And when my
that's actually really interesting, because a lot of liberal people, like I remember what Khizr Khan and even my dad used to think this when we used to talk about the U.S. Constitution. He's like, the U.S. Constitution is just Islamic Sharia. It's the same thing. Like they just made it up. And it wasn't true, but anyway.
One anecdote from that. Growing up, there was this set of books about Muhammad and Abu Bakr and all the companions of the Prophet. And when Abu Bakr was nominated and quote unquote elected, they had a line in there that they stole Abraham Lincoln's line about government of the people, by the people, for the people, and attributed to Abu Bakr.
That's kind of what Imran Khan's doing right now. He's like, everything, the system in Sweden, that's all Islamic, but they've taken it, and we here order. It's like that's how they kind of.
If you can't honestly analyze where you went wrong, how are you ever going to correct it? That's one of the bigger problems we have. We are unwilling to look critically at our own background, our own history. So a lot of things happened went very, very badly because of Islam, and even outside of Islam, like going back to the Pakistani example, we committed genocide in Bangladesh. We don't talk about it in Pakistan. Why? So there's this incuriosity about our own history, about our own past, the positives and negatives. Of course, you're going to be at a point where you repeat the same mistakes again and again and again. And we're at a point where we can push for people to actually force them to analyze these things critically. Armin and I were at a panel in Atlanta and fighting Allah, defending Muslims. And at that panel, one of the things came up was slavery. And there was a Somali girl there that was defending slavery, a black woman in America defending slavery. Right. And what was even more hilarious was historically Somalis were slavers. They went to sub-Saharan Africa and enslaved people and sold them to the Arabs. So I wouldn't be surprised if her ancestors themselves were slavers. But when that conversation happened and she was defending slavery and other people were talking about the fact that slavery didn't really exist in Islam and it was a different thing, they don't know about Islamic history. So one of the points I brought up was that Umar was murdered by a Persian slave. So if slavery was so wonderful, why was he murdered? Why was a slave from Persia all the way out there in Medina to murder Umar? Where did he come from? What was going on in that context? And this is all from Islamic sources. Look it up yourself.
Yeah.
And sorry, go ahead.
This is the Somali girl that did the literal cringy mic drop after she spoke to us. That was so amazing. Ali, have you seen that? After she spoke, she actually literally
she defended slavery and then she dropped the mic afterwards. I made my point.
I think you should cut that part out and just link to the full version of it, because that's just
the greatest hits highlight reel of all the other stuff that
every day. Every day it's something new. No, but so
I asked her to stay to talk to us afterwards. She left. But go on, sorry.
Yeah, but going back to that, how about your the reason I'm asking this about Muhammad is the thing is that sometimes, what happens, I know you don't talk about yourself personally, but there's a lot of people who want to know about it. And the reason they want to know about it is because they feel like they can relate. Like when you go to a party, you meet somebody, you find out about them, you're like, this person's really interesting. Then you go home and you Google them and you want to know what they do. So I guess I want the audience to know a little bit about your personal experience so they can kind of relate to you in a way that, okay, why did this guy do what he did? How am I similar to him? And, because they want to, so that's why, what about your family? How did your family react to it?
So that's one of the reasons that I'm as open as I am and I push so hard. And we started at ExMuslims North America to begin with, is that my family is relatively liberal. And my mother is a big part of that she's a liberal person, accepting person. And I felt that I was privileged enough that I could speak up, and I had people that would not abandon me. They may be angry, they may be unhappy, they may react in some way or the other, but I knew that their love for me was greater than their love for their God.
Yeah, thankfully,
Yeah, so that's why I was so active and loud, and how, even before EXMNA, I was an angry atheist type person. Not necessarily angry, but I was open about it because I knew that I had a certain privilege and other people did not. Mm-hmm. And that's actually how Sarah and I originally met, and how the whole EXMNA train started, was because she was at a social event in DC where somebody told her that I'm an atheist, and she was shocked that there are brown atheists. I was the first ex-Muslim she had ever met. So there are a lot of people out there like that. And by being loud, I was hoping, and I did connect with a lot of them. They came up to me. They weren't open about it. So I would credit a lot of that to my mother in the sense of being as accepting as she is. And a lot of that comes from the fact that she herself went through a lot growing up and is a very strong woman.
Yeah. And do you have siblings, brothers, sisters at all? And are they religious?
Let's get to some patron questions in the live chat.
We will, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to know youngest of 5.
You're the youngest 5. And so your older siblings, are they also religious or not religious? Or
varying degrees, everybody's different. Some are super conservative, some are liberal. It varies person to person.
But you still have relationships with them? Or?
Yeah.
But so nothing that you've done has actually cost you in that way, right? And then
not with the immediate family, with extended family, yes.
Okay, same here. Yeah, we have very sort of similar backgrounds in that way. I think it's the same thing with my mother. Was a very university professor, very encouraged us to debate. And then when we went too far, she's like not necessarily happy about it, but she's like, "Chalo, it's okay." So anyway, yeah, thank you for that. Let's go to the patron questions.
Yeah.
Let me see where we are. Okay, so what have Mars is asking, what have your interactions, if any, with Muslim reformers like Majid Nawaz or Raheel Reza been like? Do you coordinate efforts in any cases, or are your goals exclusively opposed to each other?
I wouldn't say they're opposed to each other. So to the extent that they want to make a better world, we agree with that, and we will work with them in any way, shape, or form regarding that. Obviously, from the perspective of reforming Islam or not reforming Islam, we have different objectives in that specific instance. So I want Islam to go away entirely. They want to change it. And I personally believe that ending Islam is much easier than reforming it. Logically, it makes a lot more sense. You can convince people of, say, evolutionary biology. Convincing them that they should pick and choose the Quran is a very, very different thing when the text itself says that it is perfect.
Yeah, it's we've talked about this a lot on the show before, and there are loads of people you hear that are like, okay, I've left Islam, I'm an apostate, I'm an ex-Muslim, this and that. Loads of them. I've never really heard anybody saying, "Oh, you know what? That's it. And I've seen the light. Now I'm a reformer."
Exactly. It doesn't happen. I don't think it ever happens.
It doesn't. Yeah. Go ahead.
What I think does happen to a certain extent is people that see the problems in Islam, some of them stick around because they think that'll be more effective. So they act as reformist or progressive and stuff because they think that would convince Muslims more. But generally speaking, people are convinced by good arguments, and the good arguments are on the atheist side.
Yeah.
I know there's this whole idea about what approaches work. And, again, we've talked about this on the podcast too, is that, the average person kind of thinks that if you talk to people respectfully and you have reasoned dialogue, and that would work. And yeah, it does work on a lot of people, but there's this idea that if you're aggressive or if you mock people, if you do, what Armin was saying about, shitting on Islam, whatever, that's not going to work.
Okay. Can I say there's two different goals. And these two different goals for me personally, I use two different strategies, right? And a lot of people sometimes get confused when they put them together, because when they see me talking to Muslims, they see a different side of me to when I actually go out in the street and I have Allah is gay sign and I burn the Quran and do all that shit. Because one of them is about trying to convince other people of something. The other one is about challenging, breaking taboos and challenging limits to free speech, right? So when it comes about challenging limits to free speech or normalizing taboos, the way I talk and the way my message goes out there is completely different for when I'm actually across a Muslim and I'm trying to convince them of something. That's why you see different tone. That's why you see different strategy, but they're completely different goals. And usually, because their goals are different goals, I think they deserve different strategies. But go on.
Yeah.
Also, anger can often lead to productive results.
Yeah.
Like people may be angry. They may go back and try to, understand what you were saying to disprove you and wind up leaving. That happens a lot. Funny anecdote.
Yeah, no, sorry, go ahead. Funny anecdote.
A while ago, we did on Reddit, it's a social media site, an AMA Ask Me Anything, and it went sort of viral, was on the front page. They have millions of views. And as a result of that, a lot of Western people were exposed to ex-Muslim, but also a lot of Muslims were exposed to ex-Muslims. So they have an Islam group over there. They have an atheist group. So when that happened on the Islam group, there was people talking about these horrible ex-Muslims are saying horrible, untrue things. And if you have any doubts, come to us. We will alleviate your doubts.
Yeah.
So they were seeing in real time that Muslims were interacting with us online and were engaged in a way that was dangerous to Islam. And they were trying to diffuse that situation immediately.
No, but that's what it does. It exposes people like, if you have, for example, if you have a Facebook thing, a post, and there is somebody who's a religious Muslim comes and comments on it, and this happens a lot. And all I know is that I'm like, once they comment on it, that post is going to go on their newsfeed to all their Muslim friends and among their Muslims. And this has happened so many times. Someone will come up, they'll be like, oh, okay, so I know my friend is arguing against this, but I agree with this other guy. And next thing you know, they want to connect. So the anger thing is really important, because how many times have you had somebody come up to you and they're really pissed off about something they heard, like, I'm really pissed off about this thing that so-and-so said. And then you hear it, you're like, oh, that actually makes sense. I think the other guy's right. And then you go and you look it up and you make connections that way. And the other thing is, anger actually is the only thing I think anger is useful for. I don't think it's useful in discourse at all, but I think the only time it's useful is in the beginning of a movement when you want to raise awareness. Like a feminist movement, when they went out and they were burning their bras and everything like that. And, that's something that pissed a lot of people off, but it brought awareness to this thing that, okay, that there's a women's liberation movement happening. So the anger, same thing with Malcolm X and the civil rights movement. You had anger is a great way to get people talking about something and to evoke passionate reactions out of people, even if they're negative, because what that does is it gets a conversation going, and it sets fertile ground for it to move to the next step, which is the actual conversation and the discourse. So I think it's a great answer. One more thing, Mars, you'd mentioned Rahil Raza and Majid Nawaz. So there's a panel that happened a few years ago where it was me, Armin, Majid, and Rahil.
Which was never recorded. The audio was technical issue. One of the most important debates that I had with Majid Nawaz on the same panel, and the technical difficulties with the audio.
So all four of us were on it. It's and Rahil Raza was there too, and it was just a great conversation.
On the plus side, that event was the reason why we have this podcast, because that's where me and Ali met in the first time. So
right,
yeah.
I think did we meet there? Did we meet at the previous one, Lawrence Krauss? Oh no, that was the one afterwards.
After, yeah. Go on. So we were saying. I can't remember.
Yeah. But in any case, so yeah, that. So the thing is, like, I like both of them a lot, and I know we all, we're all really good friends with Majid Nawaz and everything. But yeah, we don't see necessarily eye to eye on everything, but we are aligned in purpose, as Muhammad said. So
wait. Aligned in purpose on some things, but not on
aligned in purpose, as in secularism.
Yeah, as civil liberties, but some of us are fighting Islam, and the other side is promoting Islam.
Yeah, no, we don't want to reinterpret the beat your wife.
We don't want to promote Islam.
Your wife. Yeah.
The thing is, if you're trying to reinterpret beat your wife, and you're trying to convince somebody that beats his wife and believes it's okay, why would they listen to you when the Quran specifically says that? You can preach to the choir that already is humanistic, but you can't convince somebody out of regressive ideas by saying that I think this is wrong when God is telling them that it is right.
Well, I mean, to me, it's very simple. If you're promoting Islamic reform, you're promoting Islam. And if you're promoting Islam, you're promoting a barbaric anti-woman, anti-kafir, anti-free speech ideology. And, and you're promoting dogma and superstition. You might call it reforming Islam. At the end of the day, you're promoting Islam and you're part of the problem. But it's okay because
devil's advocate.
Right. Okay.
Advocate.
For a lot of Western perspective, Christianity went through reform. It became wonderful.
No, it didn't. The Reformation.
That's the perspective, right?
Yeah. The Reformation had nothing to do with it. Was the Enlightenment movement that made, and the Enlightenment movement was a movement against religion, against Christianity, that made Christianity take a back seat because it came with better ideas, not because it changed Christianity. It wasn't the Reformation. It was the Enlightenment movement that did all that.
Right.
Yeah.
We're not analogs.
No. Yeah. One last thing. Even if you look at the leaders in the Reform movement, if you look at the way they became more liberal, it had nothing to do with Islam. It was competing ideas outside of Islam that made them more liberal, not Islam itself. It was never, show me the fundamentalist Muslim that was fundamentalist all his life, but they went and read the Quran and the Hadith and became liberal because of the Quran and these. It was not that. It was because of other competing ideas. But go on,
so the thing is, that's the analog. That's why this podcast is called what it's called, because we don't want the analog to be the Reform and the Martin Luther and that Calvin, whatever, John Calvin.
Which was worse than Catholics, actually. Go on.
Yeah. We want this to be an association to the Enlightenment.
We want more Voltaires. We don't want more Martin Luther.
Voltaire without the anti-Semitism.
The thing is that with Christianity, with the West, it's been 4 centuries or so, and they're still anti-gay, they're still anti-women, there's still all of these horrible things that are going on in the West. Do we really want to emulate that and spend 400 years fighting for every single inch with religious people? Isn't it better to just uproot the entire edifice of it and end it now?
Right.
Yeah, and
what people don't realize is what you were saying before.
To tell people like, hey, here's a different bullshit that is less dangerous to me. Fuck, you know what? What happened to what happened to the atheist movement that went after all kinds of bullshit? But go on, sorry.
No, but and another thing that Muhammad, like the earlier point that you made, that was actually, I agree with Armin, it was an excellent point, is that when you talk about normalizing, criticizing, and just uprooting the entire thing, you make space for normalizing people who are working on these other individual issues as well. So it is a catch-all.
But if a lot of people think that if you're against some person on something, that you can't support him on something, like people are like, oh, you're against this person or not. Like, well, I'm against this person.
The political times we're living in, right? It's so polarized that you're not supposed to support parts of an idea or parts of a person. You're either good or bad.
You're either against me or you're supporting me. If you are disagreeing with me on this, then you're my enemy. Like, no, I'm against this person's fight for this, but I'll support them on this. Like, that's how it's done. Yeah.
So I want to just to be mindful of time, I want to get through some more patron questions.
Go.
So Jim is asking, does EXMNA get Nation of Islam ex-Muslims? Do EXMNA members cluster at events?
Yeah.
I'm not sure what that means by cluster at events in the sense.
As in if they're ex-Shias and the ex-Shias hang out together, ex-Sunnis, ex-Blacks, Black Muslims, and so on. No, okay. Then there's Mars. Okay, so he's asking.
So one sec. Going back to the Nation of Islam thing, one very wonderful little story about that. We had one girl from Philadelphia that joined. That was hijabi, and we were tabling at the American Humanists. They had a convention in Philadelphia, and she came to that event, sort of in support of us, wearing her full hijab, and her family's from a Nation of Islam background. And the atheists, they were a little shocked by that hijabi woman coming up to our table and talking to us. But that was, I think, 3 years ago. In those 3 years, she's taken off her hijab. She is actually gay and has come out publicly with her friends and family that she has left the faith, and they have accepted her. And now she's
you guys made her gay? How dare you?
We try.
This is terrible. That's what we want to make everybody. No, I mean, and I can't tell you. I mean, that's just one of so many stories that I all three of us have been, pretty much personally witness to. So next, Mars, he's asking me this question. I've tried to be measured in my approaches, but it sounds like the aggressive approach is more effective. Would you advocate for this? Well, I mean, you can be a Martin Luther King, you can be a Malcolm X, or you can be a Rosa Parks. There are many different that they all had an impact.
Also depends on who you're talking to, no? In the sense of, if you're going up to a stranger and being aggressive, they won't listen to you no matter what. Because who the hell are you? On the other hand, if it's a friend and you're being a little aggressive regarding a political conversation or a religious conversation, that's a very different context.
Right. If you're on an elevator and someone and you sneeze and someone says, God bless you, and you turn on, you're like, what the fuck do you mean, God bless you? That is not going to get you. That's probably not a good way to do things. But I think aggression, I mean, look at the way that Armin works. Armin's very aggressive in a lot of ways, but there's other places he's very conciliatory. The new video that is amazing, by the way, Armin, is where he went to Australia and he went to some Muslim neighborhoods with the Pangburn crew, and he actually engaged them in conversation, and it was fantastic.
Yeah. By the way, this was recorded like a long time ago. It just got released now, so it wasn't recent. A lot of people are like, "Hey, Armin, you're in Sydney. Let's meet up." I'm like, "Yeah, no, this was ages ago." Muhammad knows how hard it is to get. By the way, a lot of people don't appreciate what the work that Muhammad is doing because I try to manage these things myself. I know what goes behind it. So when you see a video come out when ex-Muslims of North America, like we went to Houston and you see now a video, people don't appreciate the amount of planning, the amount of resources, the amount of editing, the amount of getting people to get, like, there's so much work and there's so many people involved and there's so many things that could go wrong and there's so many things that need to, happen at the same time for all of this to work. So, I mean, go to Ex-Muslims of North America's YouTube channel, support them if you want to see more content like this. If you think this is valuable and you want to see more content like this shit is fucking expensive. Okay. Just, if you can, support them financially. If you can't support financially, share these videos, let people know about them. Okay. That doesn't cost you anything. But go subscribe to the YouTube channel and wait for these videos to get released, because I'm very excited, for them to come out and, you guys are doing, the Lord's work.
So one thing is that we're able to do what we were able to do is we've established our organization. We have volunteers, we have long-term supporters, right, and we've created that critical mass. Yes. And this is one of the things that needs to happen all over the world, where ex-Muslims organize and have institutions. And those institutions are the ones that are going to do the work. So we need to build a massive amount of institution building needs to happen over the next 2 decades to support all the work that all of us need to do everywhere in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, okay. So just last question, then we're going to wrap up. And this is a fun one. Jim and Mars are both asking this. I mean, they asked most of the questions tonight. Jim saying, I read Syed likes Star Wars and Star Trek. Which is better? Should fans of both unite to ridicule fans of Twilight, as George Takei suggested? And then Mars wants to add to that. He says, did he like The Last Jedi? Answer will determine if I'm still a fan of his or not. You're on the fucking spot.
I did not like The Last Jedi at all.
Uh-oh. So was that the right answer or not?
I think that would be the right answer for Mars.
For most people, I think that's the right answer.
Was that the right answer? And actually, we just got another question from Sohan. Yeah. Hey, Sohan, how's it going? What's being done to highlight the existence and influence of conservative Islamic community leaders and organizations in America? The liberal Muslims and the left seems to deny their existence.
So far, I don't think there's anything really being done about it. And again, it goes back to the fact that we aren't organized enough. I hope to get there over the next few years, but we need to do that in every single country. So in England, Maryam Namazi's group, they did a report on Hamza Zorsas and his group, IERA, Islamic Education and Research Academy, and pointed out the anti-Semitism and the hate they engage in. But they were able to do that because they're organized enough. They have enough resources to do that. So we need to build up those resources. So support EXMNA, support other groups that are popping up. We need financial support. We need volunteers, and we need secular Muslims and ex-Muslims to start organizing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also getting politically involved. And we should probably have a whole episode on that, on like a strategic kind of thing. Maybe even like a live brainstorm where we can get everybody involved.
Okay,
I think that'd be cool.
You did answer it right. Marsh is saying yes. You
did answer it.
Yes,
that was the right answer.
Your best
Last Jedi apparently sucked.
By the way, can I take this time to thank Mars specifically in the live chat, because he is a patron of Secular Jihadists, Atheist Republic, Penguin Philosophy. I think he might be supportive of EXMNA after this as well. He's like I see him as a supporter of all these causes. So you are amazing, Mars. Thank you so much for all your support.
Right. And by the way, Mars, look up Ivan Ortega. He did a Last Jedi edit trailer. You'll enjoy that. He changed all the bad parts.
Okay, everybody look that up. Now, okay, so to end, do you have any, let's just talk about events. Do you have any events coming up?
Not to say everybody in the live chat. I don't want to say like Jim, Sohan, you guys are supporting us as well. And everybody, Mike, you're amazing. Blonde Infidel. Oh, Blonde Infidel. I know her now. You guys. Oh,
yeah. Killian, Carol.
You guys are all awesome. But go on.
Yeah. So it's just I wanted to ask you about future events coming up because I want more and more people to check out the events that you guys are doing. So do you have any on the horizon that you can announce right now?
We're not ready to announce them. We're still working on a few things. I would recommend people to go to our website, exmuslims.org, and sign up for our newsletter. And any other upcoming events will be advertised to everybody on our newsletter. We have a couple of really great things coming up over the next, I think, 2 to 3 months. So
right.
You'll probably hear about it in the news anyways.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, wow. Okay. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Armin, you got anything coming up?
With what?
Any event?
Yeah, but nothing I can talk about. I have to ask permission. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
But anyways, anything that EXMNA does, if at any point they send me like a message saying, Armin, do you want to be a part of this? There's no way in hell, unless there's something else that is already I'm committed to that I can't get out of. There's no way in hell I'm going to say no to you guys.
Yeah, same here. So Armin's done an event, one of the EXMNA events that you talked about in Atlanta. Right. I did one with you, Muhammad, just in July in New York City. That was with you, me, and Ibn Warraq, and that was a lot of fun too. Right. So, But
I also recognize that if I'm all over the place, it's basically taking away from other important people that are part of your organization.
It's not about people.
I'm selfish. I do want, because it's so much fun, I do want to be part of like every single one of them. But I do recognize that there's so many other important members that need need to get featured.
So going back to like what happened with Houston, we had people from our Houston chapter show up. Right. Most of the people that you interacted with were local to that area.
Right.
And that's one of the benefits of building the community. You have people active in all these other cities, and we can activate them and do things locally, engage with Muslims locally as things happen over there.
Right.
So we plan to do that in the near future.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Oh, by the way, remember we were going to do that at the event in Toronto last year, the University of Toronto. That didn't happen. Yeah. So it's really weirdly, I got invited to speak at the University of Toronto in Mustaga. And so I'm doing their Snyder lecture, which is not even a student group thing. It's like a university-wide thing. So I'll be doing that on October 2nd.
What?
So I'm going to actually, it's actually amazing.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to have media there. I want, anybody who's listening to this, it's on October 2nd. I think this episode's going to definitely be out by then.
Which campus is it on?
University of Toronto in Mississauga. So it's the official one, but
that's Brown Central.
It is Brown Central. So
that's wonderful, right?
You'll have a lot
better. Yeah, exactly. It's better.
So I am actually going to get everyone out there from EXMNA, the EXMNA chapter, the Muslims chapter, everybody who's here in Toronto. I'm going to post information on your groups and stuff. So just come out and represent. We want
to have a decent sized group that is already going, from what I heard.
Oh, okay, that's amazing. So yeah, it's going to be a really cool. It's going to be fun. We want to. It's a really, really good shot at taking this thing public. Muhammad, I wanted to end with a quote that you have that I absolutely love, and I put it in my book. So I've quoted you in here. So I'm going to just read it out. You once wrote, quote, "The fact of the matter is that our ideas, free speech, freedom of conscience, secularism, the idea that the civil liberties of even our enemies guarantee our own. In short, the ideals of the Enlightenment resonate around the world. I am increasingly confident that if we continue pushing for our ideas, we can pave the way for liberalism and secularism far beyond the West." Okay, and that sums up pretty much everything.
Wow.
As far as I'm concerned. So thank you for doing everything you do. Thank you for joining us. And we're probably going to do this again. This was a lot. Yeah. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, but
thank you for having me on.
Yeah, well, you're going to be on the news again, probably. So the organization. So we have to cover that again if you're free.
Yeah. So just stay on for just a second. We're going to stop.
We're going to stop the live stream. By the way, thank you everybody in the live stream. Everybody. You guys are making all of this possible. Thank you. Love you all.
The secular jihadists have been made possible thanks to the Illuminati and the covert support of Israel and the CIA. That's what we have been told, but we haven't received our checks yet. If you like what we do, please support us. Share the podcast with your friends. Write and tweet us with topic and guest suggestions. Or head over to secularjihadist.com and give $1 or more for exclusive access to live video. Have your questions read and answered on the air, and more. Till next time, may the flying spaghetti monster be with you.